Good evening and welcome to the Carlisle Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, May 14th, 2019. I'm going to read through the agenda. It should be a pretty quick night, though I really shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, you jinxed it right there.
So at 7 o'clock, we're going to start with community input. At 7:05, we will discuss a residential open space community open space parcel. At 7:15, a project update for the public safety communication system. At 8 o'clock, review the ground lease for the solar photovoltaic array at the transfer station. At 8:30, review the Board of Selectmen 2019 goals. I just wanted to close them out. At 9 o'clock, Town Administrator's Report. At 9:10, Liaison Reports. At 9:20, a reorganization of the board. At 9:25 minutes, and at 9:30, we will adjourn. So at first, I will be welcoming Barney when she gets here, but I just want to thank Kerry Kissinger for all of his service over the last 2 years, and welcome Barney. Barney had a prior engagement for tonight. She is going to come, but she'll be here a little bit later, which is typically this meeting. We start with the reorganization of the board, and then we immediately switch who is the chair. But it's just really important that Barney is able to participate in the reorganization of the board. So I'll be chairing this entire meeting. We'll reorganize at the end, and then I won't be chairing the next meeting.
Unless we want to.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless,
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that possibility. Okay.
However, this not ceding your power at the beginning of the meeting makes me reconsider.
So I also want to...
Welcome me back? Oh, thank you. Thanks, yeah.
I tell you, they're not sitting together.
Hey, the town has spoken.
Yes, welcome back, Luke. Congratulations on your win. Yes.
Well, they do that.
They're
Yeah.
smart.
Yeah. They get this 24/7.
Abuse.
Probably would be.
So I also, if I can get us back on track, is that okay with you?
Well, you're going to get us behind anyways.
I also want to thank everybody who came to town meeting for participating. It was a long slog. 3 nights, first ever. I'm glad I was chair to be able to oversee that. I think I'm maybe the only one that also brought us to 2 o'clock in the morning on a Board of Selectmen meeting. But I just really want to thank everybody. It was really terrific discussion, dialogue, and we got through a whole lot of things, and I think mostly because of Wayne's excellent leadership, and so I want to thank him for bringing us through our 3-night session and helping us get through all of these really, really big issues. So with that, I'm going to open it up for community input. Is anybody here for community input? I think it's the little one here. If you could just start with your name and address.
Sure. I'm Kay Hurley, 392 School Street. I'm a new citizen of the U.S. as of January this year, so I'm a beginner in the actual process of government. So I want to say that I'm enormously grateful for and respectful of the time and effort you and other boards and committees give to the town. And my job is to help you. And so my comments tonight are offered in that spirit. I was co-presenter of Article 35, the deer hunt, at town meeting. This is my introduction to town government. And I'm as much a plant lover as an animal lover, even a fungus lover, but I'm most interested in the connections and interactions in nature and how it all works. So it's a complex system, and often when you tweak a single component, you're likely to have no effect, or maybe an effect that you hadn't expected. So I believe that deer management is a bigger, broader topic than hunting. The basis for the 2018 pilot hunt was understory protection. We don't have a good handle on understory health, which makes it very hard for you to know how to proceed and whether or not we made any difference. We do have some baseline assessments from land stewards, and I plan to work with CONSCOM and the stewards to help update the status of the understory and the various factors, including deer, that play a role. So I have two requests. One is about naming. The current deer committee is charged with regulating and managing the hunting of deer versus the role of deer in the bigger ecological picture. So I suggest it be called the Hunt Committee and that it have a hunt agent or a hunt manager. And the deer themselves could be considered as a component in the context of other aspects of the environment. And the logical place, instead of having another committee, seems to be with land stewards. Naming is important and it conveys meaning. My second request is that you postpone your decision on town land hunting until 2020, when you would have some understory information to inform your decision. But if you decide to go ahead in 2019, that you treat it as another pilot rather than a full-scale hunt. Thank you very much for hearing my comments.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Hi, I'm Gina Fox from 252 Westford Street. And I was trying to get before the Board of Selectmen very generously signed a race amity proclamation last year. And then we were looking, but unfortunately we didn't realize it was just for this particular day. So we wanted to see about having one signed in perpetuity, so that it would just say the second June of the second Sunday in June would be Race Amity Day. We have secured from the FRS the common for a celebration this year. I didn't know if the BOS needs to sign off on that or anything.
Yeah, so it would be better if you waited until the town administrator report, because that is a part of the town administrator report, right? Right. And I think so the request here is that it's not day, that it's...
I think the proposed proclamation is correct.
Is correct?
It's going to be the second Sunday. Yeah. I have it here. So there was-
Okay.
Yes, it's on our agenda.
Oh, it is. I didn't know. If
Yeah,
it
no,
was.
it's actually part of the town administrator report.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And that part of the report again, that part of the night is at what time? 9 o'clock?
At 9 o'clock, but very often we take the town administrator early as filler if we're ahead of schedule.
Perfect.
Wow.
Sorry.
Wow, that's what he thinks of you. I just moved up a rung.
I had an emergency. I'm called. I'm flying out for a family health emergency tomorrow. We're having a little race amity meeting at my house shortly, so I'm going to go home.
Okay.
Come back.
Okay.
And okay.
Yeah, I think you
Probably not.
don't really need to be here
Okay, perfect.
unless you want to just pick it up.
Perfect. And I had a letter of support.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all very much, select people.
Anybody else here for public input? Okay. Seeing none, let's move on to residential open space community.
David Friedman, Hutchins Road, and co-author, I guess, of the residential open space community bylaw and the amendment to the bylaw which just passed. And the purpose of the amendment was to have an impact on the ongoing Woodward Village development, but because the application for a special permit for that was filed prior to town meeting, and that amendment, technically it wouldn't have to, wouldn't apply to the development, but the developer, Dan Gainsborough, has generously offered to have it apply. And so he signed a document stating that he will accept the amendment, and I believe that statement has a place for the selectmen to sign that as well.
For me, yep.
For the chair to sign that. And so I'm just, if you have any questions, but otherwise it's just to sign that, and then I would get a copy of that to the planning board so they'd have it part of the permitting record.
And so this is a permit-related thing, not a deed-related thing? Does this
Well,
go with the deed as well?
The document itself is permit-related, but the steps that accepting the bylaw amendment will result in things in the deed,
Okay.
yes. But that what you're signing is just him accepting the amendment as part of his, as relevant to his application, applicable to his application.
Is the date on here right? February 6th?
That was the date when he
When he signed
agreed
it?
to do, yeah,
Okay.
I've been working with him for months to
Okay.
work this all out.
Well, I move we authorize the Chair of the Board of Selectmen to sign, what is this, this document on behalf of the board.
Second?
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. It's unanimous.
There it is.
Last act is chair. Maybe not. I think we should make him chair just for
5:11?
Today?
Yeah.
It's the
14.
14th. How about this, the 14th? Where were you the last 3 days? Last weekend.
I guess you might as well stay at the table, David, for the next agenda.
Yeah. Give this to you and then copy to George, to Gretchen and George. Actually, maybe scan it, no, maybe scan it and get it to me too, and then I'll get it to Dan.
All right. Public Safety Communication System.
So there is a group which is primarily public safety professionals in town that I have been a part of for the last several years related to getting the funding for and now overseeing the installation of all of the various elements that town meeting approved just under $3 million to do. And so you haven't really been given an update as to the status, so I wanted to do that also because there's one significant change that we want to get your okay to. So the update is that the 190-foot tower at Banna Davis is up behind the wastewater treatment plant. It is fenced around it. The antennas aren't on it yet, but it's up. The 110-foot tower at Proctor Road is up, and the antenna's on it, and it's fenced, still awaiting electrical connection that Eversource has to do. The police station antennas have been up for a while, mounted on the rear of the building, and the equipment room has been expanded, and I don't know that there's equipment in there yet, but anyway, it's set up for all the equipment. Fire station foundation was put in. There were some issues with the compression strength or something of the concrete, and we went through a couple months of sort of checking cores and things and seeing whether it was going to be okay and talking to the building commissioner, and the tower company had an independent lab look at it, and at the end of the day, they concluded that it was probably structurally okay, but might not last as long as it would have been if it had met the standards, and We had a discussion last week and concluded that we didn't think it was worth it to the town for however much money discount they might have given to the town for accepting something that didn't meet the specs. We had no way of quantifying what the amount of time that it might not last as long, and also didn't fully accept the argument about the structural integrity. And so we've asked them to take out the foundation that was put in, and so they will do that within the next couple of weeks. So there'll probably be a noisy day here or a noisy couple of days at Town Hall, because it's 10 feet of concrete and a lot of rebar in it. So having blasted out all of the ledge to get to it, they've now filled it with man-made lead thing. But they're going to get it out and then proceed with that.
So they're just going to put a whole new one in?
Yes, a whole new foundation, and presumably pay a lot more attention to the mix this time. 871 Bedford Road is the existing tower on the Endereg property. The antennas and the new cabinet are there. I think the electrical is still to come, the connections to that. A Nurse Neck Hill in Concord. Tim emailed me yesterday or today that an agreement has been signed, but we haven't put the new equipment there yet. Middlesex, there's a new tower planned there, but it's in an appeals process with abutters, and it's expected that it'll be resolved sometime this year, but we don't know for sure when. And the last item, tower-wise, was we were planning on an extension at 1022 Westford on the Smalley property, a 10-foot extension, which is the maximum that's allowed per the special permit that was granted for that. Our anticipation was that we would pay the same nominal sort of $1 a year fee that we pay for being on the Anderegg Tower, which is owned by the same tower company, but we have found out through Tim's efforts that SBA, which is the tower company, purchased that tower that already had that agreement in place, so they accepted it, and we're just sort of one spot on a tower with all kinds of things on it. Whereas at Sorley, or should call it 1022 Westford, we would be the only ones on this 10-foot extension, and therefore preclude them from leasing that 10-foot extension to somebody else. And so their view is they would charge us for it, and they want to charge us a lot of money. Their initial statement that they were going to charge us $15,000 a year with a 4% annual escalation, and Tim negotiated to $13,320 a year with a 3% escalation.
Negotiation, right?
Well, the difference between a 4% and a 3% escalation, it actually turns out to be huge. It's like that thing, if you save a penny a day, you have a gazillion dollars in a year kind of thing.
Still money we don't have, but, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In any event, we concluded in our working group, advisory group to Tim, that it didn't make sense to lock the town into having to pay that kind of money short-term and especially long-term, because by year 10, it's $17,000 and would continue to escalate. And so somebody on the group noted that a property that we'd looked at early on, which was the town owns a tax-taking parcel about 500 feet west on Westford Street, which is an old abandoned quarry. It's a half-acre parcel, and we believe it would be a suitable site to put up a tower. And I think you have a sheet in your packet that sort of shows the
price differential.
The price differential. It's the lower right-hand corner, the numbers that matter. To not proceed with the extension at 1022 will save us approximately $85,000. A new tower 500 feet to the west, and this is based on a 150-foot tower. We may conclude that we'll do a 130 or 110-foot tower, so those would be less money, but we wanted to see what the max outlay would be $234,000. And so the net difference between those is $149,000, and the lease payments after 10 years would be more than that. The total up to that point would be $150,000. So we think the economic logic is clear to proceed and do this. The original contingency, the last line in the first column, was 138,000. A certain amount of that contingency's already been used up because of ledge, mostly because of ledge found at Banna Davis and ledge found at the fire station, but there's still 43,000 in contingency. So if you apply that to the difference, it's a little over 100,000 difference. We want to proceed now because we're trying to get this thing up and running, and there's a need for it. And the whole system, for the most part, needs to be up and running for the thing to work because they're all filling different gaps. In any event, we found about $105,000 worth of work that we can postpone until either a special town meeting in the fall, if there's one scheduled for another reason, or next year's annual town meeting, such that with the original appropriation from town meeting, we can continue to do what we need to do and get this tower designed and built. And then at whichever town meeting it is, we would ask for, and by that time we would have a very precise number, because any contingencies would have been come up, and we would know what they were, and we would know the exact cost of this, because we'd know whether it was what size of the tower was and what the engineering costs actually were and permitting costs and all that stuff. So we just wanted sort of your assent to continue, and we would be working on it immediately. We've already scheduled a meeting on site tomorrow morning at 10 to sort of figure out, generally speaking, where on the property to put it and where the access way would be, and so the engineer can start doing the work necessary for permitting and moving forward on that.
Is there a reason for going so high on that one? I mean, that's a lot taller than the current Westford Tower, isn't it?
Yes, the tree, basically what we did is asked Motorola, which is sort of responsible for proving out the system at the end of things. I mean, basically they're responsible that it meet the specs within, 98% on 90% of the coverage area or something like that. So we asked them to do coverage plots for three heights, 110, 130 and 150, and the reason we were going higher than the 90 is the 90 was just going to be enough and wouldn't necessarily have allowed for tree growth or other issues that might arise, but we were limited to that. And so there will be the three plots we have at 110, 130, and 150 show some differences in what the coverage would be for them, because you're moving further to west. There are certain areas that other terrain in the distance would have an impact on that where it was wouldn't have. And so we're just going to look at those things and we'll make a decision. But we want to be clear, we don't want it to be any higher than it needs to be. And that's one of the things that will be looked at when the engineers.
Is it a guide tower?
No, this would be a monopole. Yes, the only lattice tower, and it won't be guide, it's just a lattice tower. The only lattice tower will be the one at the fire station. So this will be a monopole. It will be relatively close to Westford Street, but that's what we're going to be looking at tomorrow as to how far back we can set it. There are wetlands on the property, and I was out there with Sylvia, so we will have to do a wetlands filing. But Sylvia seemed to think that basically the idea might be to actually use there's sort of a quarried pit already there, and to use, to not have to dig down and just fill part of that, and that's where the tower would go. And that part of it isn't wetlands, and there's an access to that, and try to avoid the wetlands that are in the back and along one side.
Okay. Just have a couple questions about the project overall before we jump into that site.
Yeah.
One of the things that we had talked about, and we talked to Town of Concord about, was leasing their fiber and then connecting from there over to the Anderegg property. I think it was, or was it to come all the way into town?
No, basically we're talking about their fiber is just for a short run to connect to up River Road and get to that part of it, and all the fiber within town the town would do.
And that hasn't been put in place yet?
No, that hasn't been put in place yet, and the Comtrack, I think, which is the one that was contracted to do or Cybercom, is it Comtrack? No, Comtrack, I think.
Contract on, according to this.
Yeah. There won't be an additional charge to go the little distance further on Westford Street. But one of the things we were going to postpone doing was the Concord fiber connection at River Road, because it's not essential. We just felt that it was a good step relative to it. But so we would still do it, but because it's not within the contract for doing the stuff within town, we can postpone that without breaking it up and incurring cost.
Okay, my second question is, you mentioned that all the towers have to be up before the system can be brought up. Does that mean that the Middlesex is potentially going to hold us up?
No.
What happens if that doesn't go through?
No, Middlesex, it's all the ones within town that need to be for it to work. So a Nurse Neck Hill and Middlesex are sort of providing somewhat extra coverage, for example, for
Travel back and
ambulances back and forth and that sort of thing. But the Nurse Neck Hill is one of the other ones that we would postpone paying the fees that it'll take to get and the expense of getting the antennas up there until, whether it's fall or winter.
Do we know what the leasing fee is going to be at Middlesex, or we're going to?
We've allocated a certain amount of money to it, and that's one of the things that we're also assuming won't happen until we get to it.
We're pretty sure we won't have the same surprise.
Yes,
Okay,
but yes.
okay.
I mean, we were on, I mean, it's something we should confirm, but yes.
Okay.
They have a good relationship with the Concord Fire Department, and we still have connections through that, and so there's a presumption that that will not be the SBA problem.
The Nurse Neck's going on the existing towers?
Yes. Yeah, apparently it's a,
Yeah, we have a ham,
it's quite an,
we have
it's
a ham repeater on that tower.
it's quite an array of antennas. And right now, I think police are on there, and it will be police and fire that will both be on. I think within the same space that it is, but it's new antennas.
Okay. And so, I just wanted to about the site itself and the new site. Are saying, okay, doesn't mean it's just going to go get built. It's going to go through a site plan review process, right?
Yes, but with all expectation that it will. I mean, part of a decent chunk of the expense is the engineering and preparation for filing, so we don't want to.
900-foot diameter.
No, you don't for public safety.
Oh, you don't for public safety, okay.
Right. Public safety is not subject to the local wireless bylaw, but it is, because it's a non-residential
okay,
use,
so
it's subject to
that
site
kind of
plan review.
We already
Goes
buy
into my other question about.
the other one at Proctor. That one isn't.
That's public safety,
Yeah,
and
and it's
and the
not-
one at Banta is public
But
safety.
then that would, if it does not conform to all the bylaws, then it would be, we would not be able, in a position possibly to rent it,
So,
or
well,
other entities.
I believe, so what we've done is, our consultant on this whole project has sent out a notice to all of the cellular companies that might want to site here and saying, this is what we're planning on.
Including the ones that are on the current poll, I hope.
Yes, I mean, it was basically to all of the carriers
To
that one
strengthen our
would.
negotiating position.
And basically said, we're doing this, if you're interested in taking part in this and, paying for some part of this work, then we're interested in hearing from you. And already got a response back from AT&T, which is interested in providing, being the provider for something called FirstNet, which is the global or national public safety connection that's supposed to be happening. And their general goal is to provide the FirstNet as part of their contract with the federal government and be able to have cellular on those same locations. So the letter, the email that went out to them said that any antennas that you would want to have would have to be interior mounted antennas and would have to meet the standards of the bylaw and so on. And if that was the case, they would be responsible for the permitting and meeting whatever the requirements were. So we're looking into that.
So yeah, I was just wondering if you've already looked into it and if the.
Well, we're seeing if anybody's
You're looking into it.
interested.
Right.
And that'll be one of the questions. And the note I sent back to it was, if we get into any discussion about this, whoever we're talking to about it has to be prepared to agree to a very tight timeline. And one of the issues with AT&T thus far, anyway, is that it seems like there's a separate group that looks at sites and another group that actually does the work. And if there's a, 6-month gap between those or something, we're not going to be able to
However,
wait.
if we were willing to front the price, the cost ourselves anyway, because we're avoiding the 15,000 a year, and we were, even if we will have to pay for this if we don't get anybody else. So if instead of requiring them to be on board and help to fund it, if we then charge them rent,
Yes.
maybe that's a.
Right, and that would be,
Way to
in answer to
select that.
Alan's question, that would be one reason possibly to put up 150-foot as opposed to 130-foot.
That's why, I don't want us to do something stupid that cuts our nose to spite our face, so to
Right.
speak.
And it's a balance between timing and budget, and, the difference between, these numbers aren't precise, but the difference between 150 and 130 feet might be, say, 20,000, and then at 110 feet might be
And
another 20,000.
And I
so
think I
on.
would also go back to the original poll company and tell them what the plans are, and see if that helps, budge them at all, because
Yeah, no, I think they're, yeah.
they'd just prefer to look for another.
And I think actually it's better for us to own,
And we also then don't have to worry about a lease ending and pole
Right.
coming down. or-
right?
Yeah. Okay.
But, it's complicated because, basically, apparently the new antennas tend to be bigger than the older antennas and harder to put within monopoles, but what they do is they do these sort of bump out things, so it's still sort of a monopole that goes up and bumps out. And I think both, I think 1022 actually just went through that, where they actually bumped it out at the top to fit in bigger antennas. They prefer to have them outside, and FirstNet may require them being outside, but we'd still require them to have their cellular ones inside. And, we would have to very quickly get into some serious discussions of the permitting and the bylaw and all that stuff.
Okay. Great. And you had a question?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the 106, if for some reason that doesn't pass at a special town meeting or next town meeting, there isn't anything in there that is ultra critical?
Well, they're all things that, except for the Concord municipal fiber connection, I think all the other things are things we want to do, but if we didn't do them, we would still have a system. But, one of the things is paving the access drive to Banner Davis. So if that didn't happen, that would be okay. But I think all the others we would want to do, and it seems to me that basically town meeting approved getting the system up, and this is a way to do it that long-term is cheaper than what we proposed.
No, I'm not saying that they
So-
won't.
No, I understand.
But it's, I'm just saying,
Yeah, no,
if for some reason.
Right, that's exactly why we're coming here, is just to make you aware of this, and, the hope would be that the logic will be as clear to town meeting as it is to, hopefully, to you.
This depends on who's doing the presentation.
Yes, well,
At this point, sorry, at this point, what's your expected timeframe for having it come live?
I would hope by this fall, but, everything else is moving along. The police department is already using all the mobiles and portables that were sort of new equipment. Fire department and DPW using some of the mobiles. The school isn't using any yet because the system they use is an entirely different simplex system, and once the new antenna's up and running, it'll be a total switch, and so they'll use those radios. The entire system, all of the antennas and everything, was set up. And I think the dispatch console was all set up in the last 2 days at a Cybercom facility, and Chief Fisher and the dispatchers, and I believe some people from fire have been out there the last 2 days to sort of see the whole thing working. So all that stuff is still moving along. So really, once the fire station tower goes up and once the foundation is in and meets the standard, that will go up fairly quickly. So the last piece of what we need essentially within the town is the one I'm talking about here. And I mean, for all, the tower segments take from anywhere from 30 to 90 days to get ordered and delivered. And we're not going to do that ordering till we make it through permitting. So, a month to get to permitting, and then a month for permitting, and then say 3 months to get the stuff, and then it gets up. So that's about 6 months, which hopefully before the end of the year.
Okay.
But as we find as we go through this, it's a big project, and there's a lot that's not within our control. But everybody is doing what they can to move it along, which is why, we're meeting there tomorrow morning. I mean, I'm going away for 2 weeks, and
What are we going to do?
I wanted to make sure this stuff was happening while I was gone.
We'll just stop doing everything so we don't screw anything up while he's away.
Anyway.
All right, anybody else have any other questions or comments? Thoughts on,
More of a better, switching the console out, is that going to be does the system go down while they do that? How do they?
No, it's the kind of thing that they do all the time, and so they know how to do it. And they basically bring in the new console and they don't take anything out. So none of the old antennas, none of the old stuff is going to be taken down till the new is up and running. But we've asked that question, and they assure us that this is a standard thing that they do because they sell new equipment and towns upgrade all the time. And they, the other question that came up was the police station work that'll be done, that all this stuff is in a room that's not one of the areas that's going to be done, and so presumably it won't be impacted by this.
That's a pretty tight space as it is.
Yes.
And then for cell tower height, again, room for growth, I think it's going to be, literally, room for growth is going to be, because it's line of sight, and if
Oh,
you
yes,
get
no.
those trees and they get to
Exactly.
be higher,
Yes.
you're really,
Yes. No, the
you're
extension,
saying go 150?
well, I go as high as is practicable, and, because I just don't want to have to do it again.
yeah. And, it's one of those things,
Body.
it is one of those things where, and we'll talk about it, and we'll talk about it tomorrow with them. You need different foundations, and you need different structure, and if you want to allow for extension, then the structure is more expensive and that sort of thing. So you have to consider all those
So
things.
you'll be coming back to us with some data?
No, I think,
choices, or
I think basically Tim is sort of authorized to proceed, and this group will continue to advise, and,
We're saying it's up to 150 feet, it's up to them to decide.
Up to 150 feet, okay.
yeah, and we
Or
will,
149,546.
I would like to know what kind of money we're talking about, and I'd like to know about it sooner rather than later.
I will definitely come back and report to you.
Because I don't want to have a surprise at
Yes,
the end of the
Yeah.
year.
But I think the idea is that it's $149,500, potentially less some contingency.
No.
yes.
Less than,
Right.
no.
And that's an outside figure.
Is already more than the contingency.
No, but less,
Take the contingency out of that
Yeah,
number.
it's 40.
it's 149, right.
Right.
And we still have that 43,000 in contingency.
But you're taking that money out from other things so that we don't have to pay for it this year. We're going to ask for it next year or this fall.
Right, and if, if we get in a bind, we'll come back and say, we'd like you to, the theory was that if there was a special town meeting for some other reason, we would ask then as opposed to waiting. But if, if we find that some of these other things should be going forward, we would come to you and say, we need this, let's do a special town meeting and get your, but my answer wasn't that we wouldn't come back for approval, but as soon as we have any information, Tim will inform you as part of the town administrator's
Yeah.
report. And if-
I'm thinking in terms of budget, because this project is going to be more than the 3 million that we had originally budgeted. And I'd like to know how much more it's going to be, and I'd like to be able to plan and,
Well, one of,
advance and not be kind of,
well, the budget only covered construction. It didn't cover service contracts or leases or any of those things. One of the things that you approved, that was approved at town meeting, was authorizing you to enter in lease agreements for cell towers. So the budget never was covering those things anyway.
but it would also be nice to know how much the whole project cost
Yes.
then, including all that.
Yes.
Because
No,
every
and-
town
and-
needs to know.
Yes, and we
what
are,
we spent on it.
every time we sit down, we look at spreadsheets that show what the changes are, but that information, as we move through this, we will keep you informed. That the engineer hasn't been out to the site yet. They'll be there tomorrow morning, and, these are all based on estimates of what it should cost to do these things. But the good news about any request to town meeting will be that we will should have very hard numbers.
Thank you.
Okay.
So this isn't something we need to vote on, is it?
I don't think so.
Not at this point, I don't think.
It's mostly to just acknowledge that you agree with the approach that we're taking. I don't know whether it's something you need to vote on or not.
You don't need the additional appropriation at this time.
Right, so,
Right.
Kind of a heads up that we're gonna need it.
Unless it's gonna come out like wildly different than this estimate.
we have no reason to
Yeah.
think that it will, but,
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to get at,
Yeah.
If it changes, then
We're
we'll be
talking
back.
100,000 in round numbers.
and,
It would be around 11
And-
years of payback if we were doing the rental or the lease, and, that's kind of what I'm looking for.
and we are at least doing the due diligence to see if there are any cellular companies that either would provide lease money or, and
And I guess I would like to know also what you think the upkeep of that tower will be over the years, because now we own it, so we're going to have to keep it up, and I think the
Right.
maintenance.
So one of the questions that we've been looking at is whether one pays for a service contract, or whether you deal with costs as they come up, and not primarily for the towers, but for all the equipment. And so that's one of the things we need to look at, and so we've asked the public safety people now who've been dealing with this stuff, what the expenses have been, and, that's one of the things that'll come up, is which way you go. And it's like buying insurance, if you pay more each year versus,
Except oftentimes, though, if you have the service contract, you have a guaranteed SLA for how long it's gonna take them to get there to fix a problem.
right, and that was one of the things we looked at. And I mean, the largest piece of equipment is the console, and so that's likely to, be an item that you pull out separately and do whatever it is that somebody recommends. I mean, everything that I've told you about this is all stuff that's above my pay grade and
Again, I'm just
and
trying to
not
think
part of
in
my
terms of,
technology.
when you buy a car, let's say, you think about just what you paid for the car, but then you forget that, gee, it's 10 cents a mile when you use it, and that you really need to have all this other extra money around, because if you don't maintain that car, it's not going to last as long, and it's going to cost you more ultimately, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So I'm just trying to
Yes,
to
yes. And there,
make sure that we're thinking about all those things in advance, that's all.
yes, and the one other thing is that there are some things that we're paying now that we won't have to pay. They're not in the grand scheme of things, they don't come to the scale of what we're talking about, but we're paying lease fees for copper wire and various things that we won't need to be paying for once we're all connected via fiber. And so, at some point, Tim and whomever can sort of figure out what the savings are there,
Maybe
just
we
so
put
we're
those
aware.
savings in a special account for maintenance. Because, well,
David, are there generators at each of these towers?
I believe so. The one at Banner Davis is sharing the generator that's already there for the wastewater treatment plant. And I believe there'll be a generator at each of the other ones.
Some of the receive sites do not. So I don't think Proctor does, for example.
Okay.
I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so some of I think Proctor's
They're
are.
all the send sites.
All right, so are we all okay with this? Okay?
Yep.
yeah.
Yep, all right, thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Okay. That was a lot of time was allocated to that one.
That's okay.
So why don't we jump over to the town administrator's report, Hiller?
Some filler.
Some filler.
You don't want to
Tap
review
dancing.
all those contracts?
Well, I want to wait until 8 o'clock.
Oh,
Okay. Turning to the town administrator's report, I wanted to make you aware of a request. Actually, Chief Sarles is here. This evening, he's requested to use the Highland Building for fire department training as they've used in the past.
Burn it down.
Nothing,
You said that, man.
so maybe the chief
What
could
do you-
explain to you what they have in mind, but
Come on up and tell us about it.
take the hot
So
seat.
we
yeah.
actually used it last Wednesday. So it's nice to have a building where you can do that kind of thing. So last Wednesday, we actually disconnected it from the fire alarm circuit, filled it with pretend smoke, a fog, and set a flashlight off, which is the fire, and had a drill. So we had, a 140-pound dummy in the basement to be rescued, and we had a firefighter get lost in the closet and have to get rescued, and all of the kinds of things that one does. And you can do this in a field, but it's not nearly as relevant to the people doing it. So we've done it in the past. We didn't flow water, obviously, inside it, but you can do almost everything else without really doing any damage. So that was.
And you did it on the 8th?
Yeah. But
was it
kind of-
during school hours?
No. So we usually train between 7 and 10 p.m. on Wednesday nights.
Because one night when the alarm went off, they were already there.
That was the one night the alarm didn't go off.
Yeah, at some point, we can have discussions about putting a dehumidifier in there so that we don't get so many of those. But in any case, it's nice to have a building to do that with. We've done it in the past when David was kind of more managing it. Now that he isn't, I just want permission that we can do this when we need to.
It's fine with me. Just-
Yeah, it's
Answer
fine
our
with me.
questions,
It's
what do we do
just,
with the Highland Building?
I mean, I know. I wish we could use it
Training, yeah.
Right,
for more than just training, but,
all right. So I don't think we need to vote on this, right?
No.
So it sounds like you have approval to use it as needed for training.
knock yourselves out.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Item number 2 is the proclamation for Race Amity Day. Gina Fox was here earlier. You did a proclamation last year, and the proposed proclamation in your packet does name it as the second Sunday in June, so that you wouldn't have to add the date in each year.
I see.
Have the,
Yeah.
it would be each year.
Second Sunday.
I'm sorry, the one I'm looking at says
Mine has the date.
Sunday, June 9th.
Your motion has the date in it.
The motion?
Yes, the motion is incorrect, in other words.
Okay, all right.
So we just changed that to say on the second Sunday?
Second Sunday in June.
Sunday in June.
Um,
Second annual.
Well,
For the annual, yeah, just for the
Yeah.
annual.
okay, there's two things. There's the proclamation, and then there's the permission for the use of the town common.
That's right.
So don't we have to do that every year, though? The permission for the town common?
Right.
Okay, so,
Last year was Center Park. This is the first time they're using
okay,
it.
so
Where's the
that's,
proclamation there?
that's correct. The motion is correct then, because that's for the use of the
Yeah.
common. And we don't have a copy of the proclamation in our packet, as far as I know. I didn't see it.
We don't? So we did.
I don't see it.
Well, that's a.
I don't- I'm seeing it.
The Board of Selectmen proclaim. Yeah, they just
I thought it
proclaim.
was,
The second Sunday in June is race amity.
Unless it's somewhere else.
Go ahead and do it.
All right.
All right, I will take a motion.
Okay, I move that the Board of Selectmen proclaim the second Sunday of June as Race Amity Day in Carlisle.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Is there a motion for the 2019?
I move that the Board of Selectmen authorize the use of Carlisle Town Common on Sunday, June, now I've crossed it out, 9th, from 1 PM to 5 PM for the second annual celebration of Race Amity Day in Carlisle.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
So I guess when we give her the proclamation and the approval, we just need to make sure she knows she needs to come back,
for the use of the,
yeah, for the use of the common.
And/or wherever they want,
Right.
any public land, yeah.
Okay.
okay. Moving on, the next item has to do with appointments to the Municipal Facilities Committee and the Finance Committee. We'll be doing annual appointments over the next few meetings, but the FinCom appointments are different in that they expire with the end of town meeting. So we had two FinCom terms that expired at town meeting. One is Jim Dar, who wishes to be reappointed, and the other is Tom Smith, who has sold his house and moved out of town, so there is a vacancy to be filled on the Finance Committee. I know they're.
This is the problem with coming to Board of Selectmen meetings, we just look out here and we just nominate.
Bill needs a committee. So they have a recruit who looks promising, so but I think in the meantime, if the board would vote to reappoint Jim Dar to a 3-year term, that
I
we could
move
do
we-
that this evening.
Appoint Jim Dar of, I forgot where he lives. I know the name of the streets up on, near Chick Davis's. Anyway, it's a 3-year
3-year term.
on the FinCom.
Second?
Is that good enough? You'll fill in the rest
You'll
of
look
it?
up his address, right?
Yeah, we can fill the
Yeah,
address in.
Okay.
It's a reappointment. too.
I know the name of the street, I just can't.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Okay.
And we'll hear back on the other one.
And Kate might want to speak briefly on the Facilities Committee is losing 2 members, and where it's a
We are. and
5-member board, they really
We did some
need-
arm twisting this morning, but Steve Hinton is is willing to be, take minutes and come in when he's in town, but he's working on a project at work, and as soon as that's done, he's out of here in his new, camper van or whatever they call it. So he really does not want to be a full member.
Okay.
So we do need 2 members, and Josh is taking at least a 1-year sabbatical, so. And we have to, the board also has to discuss whether we can, Josh was there because we had a school committee member. We now have Rob Furtado, who is the school facilities manager, who comes and attends our meetings when he's able to. Do we want to consider having, then it got changed, and then there was no school committee. It wasn't after Rob. I don't know why you guys changed it. That was before I came in.
5 interested citizens, I think, is how
So
they're
it's just 5
described now.
interested citizens. Do we want to reconsider and have the school involved again or not? And I think there's still some things we need to talk about for the facilities committee, so. I don't know if anybody else has any idea.
So I don't recall why we took the school committee off, though for some reason I have a feeling it was because we couldn't get anybody from the school committee during that period of time.
Yeah,
But,
probably.
And then was there from the school committee.
and then-
Always, yeah.
So
Add
what we
someone-
could do possibly is invite somebody from the school committee. If they don't show up, then we find somebody else. That would give us only one other that we'd have
Yeah.
to find.
Well, Melinda just walked in.
Would you
Just
be
appoint
interested
her.
in being in the municipal facilities committee as a representative of the school committee?
Right, because Josh was the previous.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. We don't really need
Well,
to
not
put you on the
officially,
spot
but
like
yes,
that.
yeah, no, I-
Just convenient time.
It would just be good to know at some point, it would be good to know if the school committee would like to have
Yeah.
somebody representing the school on the school committee. Right now, it's 5.
On the
It's
municipal facilities committee.
Yes, what did I say?
on the school committee.
Okay.
That's okay.
Maybe school committee wants to be on the school committee, I don't know.
We all know what you meant.
It's a 5-person committee,
Yeah.
It is.
Right.
so there's one vacancy now.
No, well, there's 2. One of them was a member of the school committee, and so we just want to know, does the school committee want to have somebody on there
take that
before
up.
we just go ahead and ask anybody from town if they want to be?
Right, thank you for
Yep.
that. We'll take that up at our next meeting and discuss it.
Okay. And then we need to find one other one. Is there anybody interested?
Hey, With the knowledge of facilities,
Island.
But somebody with a knowledge of facilities willing to
put some time in, yeah.
put some time into it?
Okay, we are going to also, I think,
Did you just say
be
yes?
advertising at the Mosquito, right?
Yes. Yeah, all the
So there
vacancies.
there will be an advertisement for anybody interested.
So you'll still have a chance.
Every time I see him, I ask him. I think he's been pretty consistent in saying no, so.
Who's that, Bill? I don't know, I'm sensing a weakness.
Yeah. You think we can outstare him? How much time do we have
Yeah.
before our next agenda?
I was
item?
considering
We still have-
crying,
we
but,
still
you
have
know,
5
I'm-
minutes.
I'm keeping that card in my back pocket, you know?
All right, so we'll take that up next time, and Bill and I are going to go have some beer.
That you're buying.
All right, moving on, just to make the board aware, from time to time, we get requests from people who want to salvage materials from Greeno Barn, or maybe cherry pick is the word. They want to kind of take some items, but they don't want responsibility, for the whole thing necessarily. I think the last time we discussed it, we were hoping, we were going to put it out to bid to someone who would not only salvage it, but would remove it, remove the foundation and leave it, as it once was, undisturbed earth. We haven't talked about it for a while, so maybe it's something we want to put on the agenda
I
in the
think it's something
future.
for this year. I think it is going to end up costing us money, though.
Either that
So
or
it'd probably
do
not
an
be sim-
appropriation
yeah,
to
it would have be
remove it.
something, Yeah.
Mhm.
I did meet with somebody once there who was potentially interested in it, but I never heard back. So, we certainly want to advertise it as much as we can. Anybody who is interested in the barn and is willing to take it down, we definitely want to hear from them.
Yep.
Okay.
Can I just go back to number 3 again? The
Oh,
Municipal
yeah.
Facilities Committee? So we just allocated a lot of money for the Facilities Committee to do other things. Is only having 3 people on that committee, for the next several weeks going to jeopardize any of the progress?
No, but it's certainly not helpful.
Because all three are going to have to be able to meet in order to
Yes,
meet,
exactly.
and all 3 are going to, it's just a lot more to manage.
Yeah.
That's why I came directly from the airport to the meeting this morning. 'cause that
Okay.
was-
Yeah. The good thing is a lot of projects are underway now.
Yes.
For months, we were kind of in neutral,
So what's the risk of our not having, of our waiting?
Well, we have to be doing our planning for the next year because the buildings are not taking any time off from falling to pieces. And we just had, for instance, the TBA went and did a survey of the library And there are definite roof problems there, which might run around 100. There's mold because there's not adequate ventilation under the roof, and it's a warm roof and not a cold roof. There's no air things, and there's part of it's a slate roof, which is exceedingly expensive whenever you want to do anything on it.
We got
And
slate on
then
the barn,
there
though.
are air handler issues.
Boy.
And apparently, in fact, I think Bill was quoted on this, the gas in the refrigerant in the chiller is an old-fashioned gas, and we're having to go and find salvaged gas from other old-fashioned things, which is very expensive, so.
And so the two people
We got
who-
problems.
The two
in
people
River
who
City.
are getting off of this, are they off effective immediately, or are
No,
they on until the end of June?
They thought they thought they were getting off now, and I informed them that they're only off at the end of June.
Okay.
So
So we have a full committee right now,
we do until the 1st of July, yes.
and the people who want to get off agree to that? We can't actually tell them what to do.
No, we can't, and yeah, I think Josh will be back. He was trying to say goodbye to us, and we said, no,
Okay,
not tonight, Josephine.
all right.
All right. 8 o'clock, you want to?
Sure.
Go to the 8 o'clock agenda item and come back to
All right.
this?
Thank you. 8 o'clock is the ground lease for the transfer station.
In your packet, you have the proposed lease agreements for the transfer station and the school property, also the power purchase agreement and proposed pilot agreements. Of course, there's been some news in very recent days regarding these projects, and we've got 3 members of the solar lease working group here tonight to talk about that. I think Bob Clark is probably most conversant with the details of the proposed leases, but again, he might not be moving forward at this point at all. We don't know. The Amoresco has backed away from the transfer station as a site. They wanted a short period of time to consider whether they could do the project at CPS as a standalone project, whether it made economic sense to continue with that. And I know the school committee has reviewed the proposed lease on their end, but I think until we hear from the proposed vendor, we wouldn't know whether we were going forward at all. So I don't know if we want to call these folks
Sure.
forward, but we can
Come on up.
grab a chair.
You only get one chair, though.
Yeah, that's
gotta
one
share.
problem.
Yeah.
One problem, but
We'll give the chair to the school committee.
This one's for jumping. No, this is fine.
well, I think, I know the board's aware of the issue that surfaced with the transfer station, that was deemed to not be a suitable site because the transfer station was built upon the town landfill, which collected, or the town dump, and collected trash for many, many years, and there's at least over 20 feet of trash underneath the transfer station, so it makes securing the foundations for the canopy units difficult, if not impossible, for Amoresco, and they're not willing to go down 30, 40, or however deep they have to go to find solid ground, if you will. So that all kind of blew up at a meeting last week, actually. I won't put the chief on the spot, but I know he was at that meeting last week as well, so maybe can chime in.
I'm
So-
surprised.
No.
So I just want to make sure everybody, because, we all saw it, but there's people who are watching this,
Yeah.
at least 3 or 4. And so I'm just repeating what you said, it was a landfill. There's 20 or 30 feet in some places of trash, right?
I think the evidence is a report from the mid-'70s when a DPW building was evaluated for the site that described borings that they took at different locations. There's no map that shows where the borings specifically are, so
Right,
that
so
would
we don't
be-
actually know.
That would be useful to know, but it
Because
just
in reading that, it
described-
seemed like it was even under the current DPW building.
Yeah, I guess I had a hard time visualizing it without a map.
Mm-hmm.
Because it talked of edges of property, but you didn't know what the property was at the
Right,
time.
and I think it's like a few different,
Right. I think the idea is along Morse Road, then there was a big hill and you dumped your trash over. So it'd be where the transfer station is now and heading toward Lowell Road. So it wouldn't be back where the DPW
Yeah.
buildings are. It would be from where the transfer station is toward.
Okay.
So,
because the document I read was talking about the footings for the DPW building and that it would be okay, though it is still on trash.
yeah, it would have been a lot longer ago than, a more recent dump was.
Uh-huh.
Which building? Not the,
They called it the DPW building. I mean,
because there are two
one.
buildings. There's the big barn, that was a horse barn that was there even when people.
I don't know if
dumped-
that, was that
That's the
building ever
reason why
built?
that surprised
It
me.
was like a study. It wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily, it was just a study document
Yeah.
saying,
And there is a new survey now that the municipal facilities just did of the site and did test borings for septic, so that could, but not there. It was on the back of the
Mhm.
site, so.
Okay, so they backed out, they didn't back out, it's
They
not feasible
declined
for them
pursue
to.
it. And there's also no evidence that the landfill was capped per DEP standards back in the 70s. Say it wasn't done, but there's no one's been able to establish that was done. So I don't think you could site a facility on the landfill that wasn't properly capped. I mean, there were solar arrays at transfer stations and.
He was permitted to do the transfer station on there. We have valid permits to do what we're doing there. We don't have permits to put in foundations for, and with the other.
Okay, and so then, so that takes away half of the project for them right now, right?
Right.
They've definitely said no, is that right?
So they've decided they're not even going to investigate it further? They're,
no,
No, they're
their
not.
email said they're out on that, basically. And they said they would, by the end of the week, let us know whether they'd be okay with the school as a standalone.
how do we feel about that?
So the other thing is based on what was found, it seems unlikely that any of the other respondents to the RFP would be interested in trying something there. So,
Yeah, they have the same problem.
yeah, exactly. It's
Sure.
not something specific to this vendor.
Right. It's still trash.
Exactly. So, and any vendor's going to have the same problems.
Okay, so transfer station's out, they're gonna get back to us on Friday, whether or not they're interested, or the economics of it as well.
I don't know whether it'll work. I mean, I would advise that we go forward and approve it as is versus having them want to renegotiate it since we've gotten this far with the schools. Melinda has some language, I think, recent language that changed. I think the motion was to approve it with giving town council the ability to negotiate fine-tuning language.
And the finances of the two projects were reasonably independent of each other.
Yes.
They were quoted that way in the RFP.
They were, the RFP was set up that way. The RFP was stated that we might give one project to one vendor and the other project to another vendor. We might do just the ground mount. So it was stated that way. And actually for the school, the base bid was for the parking canopy with an add to the ground mount. They have always tried to link the projects together and say, well, they don't really work. But my sense is, well, we'll find out, basically. And my sense is they've applied for the interconnection. I did that 3-4 weeks ago, and the impression they've given is they've gotten reasonably positive feedback from Eversource that it would not be overly expensive. So I think that would color their decision as well. But I'm guessing I don't want to guess.
So the
But
other.
I would say, for the town, I would say half is better than.
Sure.
Yeah, nothing at all.
The other factor that we found out at the school committee meeting is the timeline of what they can do at the school. And we were hoping that they would be able to do something this summer, but based on the time that it's going to take for them to procure the solar panels themselves, it looks like it's not going to be possible until next summer. And so school committee is trying to figure out whether they want to do anything in the spring or go all the way to next summer to do it. However, the financials are all decided based on when we sign all these agreements, not when they actually put a shovel in the ground. So it's still in our best interests to try to get the lowest block number possible. And so if we sign everything off and they go through site plan review and everything in the next few months, then we know exactly how much we're going to make when they actually build it. So, assuming they're still interested.
Right, so they can apply to the SMART program after the planning board approval.
Right.
There's nothing about these projects that keeps us from treating them independently. The only
No.
concern that why we needed to do two of them was Amoresco's concern, not ours.
Right, or two is more money for the
Right,
town.
right.
You know, but
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
but Amoresco was the only, it was never stated that way, and they've assumed, well, again, we'll find out now.
Yeah.
I think it would be a positive project on its own.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, so I agree. I think we should move forward.
Right, so I guess in terms of the lease, right, the question is, do you guys have a whole bunch of comments? Do you want to go through it? Do you want to let the lawyers handle it? Do you want to have the lawyers update it and then get back to you? Right? There is a certain time component to it because, we need you guys to sign off on it first, then the school committee needs to sign off on it. And then they can start the survey, the work that they need to do at the school. And then they can get into site plan review. There's a certain number of weeks on that, and then we got to get all the way through that before they can actually start to apply for smart block.
If there's no transfer station project, the selectmen won't be signing the lease.
They won't sign the lease, but the wording in the thing that we passed at town meeting says the lease will be approved first by the Board of Selectmen and then by the school committee and signed by the school committee.
And as I understand it, we can approve it
Right.
Without signing.
authorizing the legal counsel to make
Right.
necessary modifications.
Right. So if you have just a couple of modifications, that's fine, but if you guys have bigger concerns, it is possible that it would delay us by a block number, but it's not a huge amount of money by the block number now. It's like, what, between,
It's like a
like 5,000 for each block number we end up delaying. So it is, okay, maybe it is big money. But in any case, it's not the end of the world if you guys have concerns, but it would be great if you guys could go ahead and do what you're saying, go ahead and improve it with some modifications. So,
I read through, I don't have serious concerns. I mean, I was listening to what, I've been somewhat involved with listening to what the lawyers had to say as they went through all this. And I think we're safe in doing it now with the authorization to let the legal counsel make necessary minor modifications.
No, I agree.
I submitted all my comments to the attorney. I was hoping to be able to talk to her about it
The
today.
answer to one of your questions is that the reason there's not a name now is that the company forms a separate corporation for each location.
Separate LLC that
So
would
the name is
own-
not known at this time. what
So
it
it's
was
still not
called.
known that, okay.
It would be Amoresco, but they'd be the ones to form.
Yeah,
it.
okay,
Right.
yeah, but I had other questions.
I might be able to ask him. I've been working pretty closely with Jenny on some of this
Okay,
stuff,
well, I
so
had three
can-
questions. She knows what they are.
Okay.
I mean, there were a bunch of typos and things that
Those
are
are
not.
modifications.
Typos I don't care about, but one of the things was, and this was in the ground lease, and it was under 2.5, where they put in the XXXs for the compensation for any damage while they're installing. And I guess I was wondering why they would put a dollar amount in there in advance, because you can't really calculate that,
That's
and not
paid to-
handle it the way they, because the next sentence it says that they'll just fix any of the damage.
Right, so in my comment today, we originally were thinking about coordinating the paving project with that, which we still are. but we had asked them to give us a paving allowance, remember? And so that was where that came from.
That's what.
But, so, that's going to be, and that was one of my comments as well, they're going to revert, I asked them to revert to the old language, which just says that they will repair any damage done in the process of installation.
Okay.
So we'll see, that's what my
Yeah, I think
recommendation
Jenny-
was.
I believe Jenny said they were going to do what you said.
Okay.
They were going to delete that specific
All right.
dollar amount because it would just be whatever damages.
My other larger concern was on 211, on the financial assurance for electric generating facility removal. Again, it's, you want a performance bond, 100% performance bond at the beginning for removing it 20 years hence, right? And I guess what I wanted to know was if that was really smart to do 20 years in advance, or if they should post a bond now, but then it should be reviewed every few years, because if it's going to be getting bigger in
Cost.
costs, I don't want to fall behind so that we don't have enough money at the end if they default. So I thought we should have either, and, you know, and to be fair, we should have an escalator and de-escalator. If it's going the other direction, they should be able to withdraw money from that bond every 3 years or whatever, I don't, you know, some period of time.
I think the bylaw has some very specific language around that, and I think we should probably visit that. So I
Yeah,
believe it says it's 125% of the estimated cost is determined by an engineer
Okay,
upfront. And
yeah, I don't know, but anyway, that was
so it
something.
probably has to agree with the bylaw.
So I also had a comment on that section, which was that it says that it will terminate at the end of the lease, but then they have 180 days to decommission it, so I thought that it should stay in effect until 180 days, in case they don't decommission it, and then we still need to have.
Yeah, okay.
So I submitted that comment.
The other question I had was, can there be eminent domain against us?
I don't think so.
Well, because their 2.16 is all about eminent domain. It looked like it was boilerplate for, you know, some regular piece of property somewhere. And if it's not, if we are not subject to eminent domain, I would not like to have this paragraph in there. So that was another question. And then the lease was contingent on the town meeting, and since the town meeting has already happened and it's already been approved at the town meeting, I would like to take the contingency language out and reference the town meeting in there that actually did do it. Sorry.
Oh, this is great.
This is great.
Absolutely.
Then there were picky things, you know, housekeeping things, like suddenly we have section 13 instead of article XIII, and that needs to be just cleaned up. But and I also wanted to make sure that in Article 5 payment, that the property taxes, if the town of Carlisle assesses or otherwise requires payment of any property taxes in excess of $11,277 per year relating or attributable to the leased property, the electric generating facility, and/or the tenant's use, then the town agrees that such property taxes shall be offset by a corresponding decrease to the annual payment. It was the same number in both of the contracts. I was wondering why it was the same number, because they were generating different amounts of power, and I just want to make sure that the number in this one is the correct number.
Should be different.
Because there were some wrong things back and forth between the two.
And you sent
I
that
can
to
give you all
Jenny.
these notes if you want.
Okay, you sent that to Jenny already,
That's the ground.
to town
Boy,
council.
I sure hope so, because I was doing this on the plane, and I think I got this.
Okay.
I think I got all my notes in there to her.
Did you copy you?
Yeah, no, she did. I spoke to her today. She did get your comments.
I know, but I just hope I sent it. I think I got all the comments. No, I think I got that one in there. Yeah, all right, and then, let me see.
Is it at 11?
Yeah, again, and then on page 20, there was some more subject to town meeting approval language that needs to be fixed. Okay, those were the biggies.
Thank you.
For the ground lease.
The school committee had other questions about the 24/7 access for them. the language didn't seem sufficient to allow the school enough control over the activities when school is in session. So we just asked about how that could be rephrased. And there were some other things just related to adding in the parking lot repairs in another section.
Yeah, it seems like 24/7 access is required, but perhaps it's restricted to the type of work that can be done.
They were just mutually agreeable with notice.
Yeah.
And then I had a question about Exhibit B, the construction start in 2019. It says to be eligible for the 30%.
So to be eligible for the 30%, they need to spend 5% of the cost of the project.
Okay, so is that include design, or is it construction?
It would be any, so they they could buy 5% of the modules or something like that.
So they can meet that
It's achievable.
requirement.
We should probably fix that language, that it's,
Because I'm not sure, does it say construction start specifically? Exhibit? Lease pricing assumes that construction starts in 2019 for a full 30% investment tax credit.
just, that language should be cleaned up. So
Okay.
you want to make sure they can get the investment tax credit, which
Right.
really they control that themselves once. Maybe that could be eliminated.
So what would be our annual income from this with just the one site?
Let's see, so Bob, it was 11,000 and change for the pilot, if I remember, like 11,277, I don't have that right in front of me. But then it's a function of the smart block, and the smart block lease payment for the school is 22,500 for block 3. So that would be a total of 34,000 for in block 3. And it goes down by about $5,000 per block that we drop there. So if you drop all the way to block 6, then it's 9,500 for the lease, plus the 11,200.
So 11,277 is the
Yeah.
right number, is.
Yeah.
They were
Just came out of my
Yes.
head, but
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that math didn't work out for me. If we're at 34,000 roughly, and you take away 5,000, that's 29,000
that's per block.
per block.
If you add the two
So-
together, so he's
So if it's
talking
block 4, then it's, whatever, 29,000. If it's block 5, then 24,000,
Okay,
roughly. I mean, it's almost exactly,
so we want to really get into block.
the sooner the block we can get into, the better.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
And there's a lot of things that happen downstream of you guys, right, before we can get there. Basically, it's got to get through site plan review.
Uh-huh.
So I think that's the only thing for the school, right?
Anybody have any further discussion on this? Is it the sense of the board that we go ahead and approve this pending incorporation of tonight's comments and any other, edits minor edits, I guess,
I think one thing to mention might be that you're approving the payment schedule too, so that's kind of, right, that's not a negotiable thing, because there's a.
We don't want them coming back and saying, we want to mess with it now.
Well, I'm just saying, right, I think you're approving a payment schedule and then minor language changes, not for someone to negotiate however they see fit, I guess, right? Does that make sense?
Right. So by our doing that, if they want to negotiate anything, you have to come back.
They'd have to come back. Exactly. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Somebody want to make a motion?
I move we approve the lease and payment schedule, subject to minor modifications by legal counsel, as described in the packet tonight.
And as edited, and
And
as,
as edited, right,
For the school.
yeah, for the school.
Does that also include the PPA?
I was going to, that's what I was going to ask.
Probably a separate motion.
Separate.
Probably a separate motion.
Oh, you want that as, you think that should be a separate motion?
We can do separate, well, whatever.
Well, so, but it sounded like you had two documents in there already, so I'd like to, so will you make
I
the
will accept the
motion?
amendment, to include the PPA.
Okay, solar power purchase agreement, the draft ground lease, and the agreement for payment in lieu of taxes for real property and personal property.
So moved.
Yeah, you got that, Jen?
Oh, there was a motion. Missed that.
All right, any further discussion?
Hasn't been seconded.
Is there anybody want to second
Second.
it? Now, is there any discussion? All right, not seeing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Melinda, I'd be happy to discuss any of that.
Okay. Yeah, the school committee has scheduled a special meeting for Thursday morning to specifically to do the same vote, so
Okay.
we can keep things moving.
Who actually signs?
Well, at that meeting, we'll probably make a motion to have the chair of the school committee sign on behalf of the committee once the amendment, the edits are done, so.
Thank you for all your work on this. Sorry this is getting so complicated.
What's that?
Thank you for all your work on this. Sorry it's
So
getting...
much fun, so little time.
Could you repeat for me the titles of the three documents you just approved?
The ground lease,
Yeah, got it.
the power purchase agreement,
Power purchase agreement?
right?
Okay, thank you, that's what I needed.
Okay,
Payment in lieu of taxes.
Payment in lieu of taxes.
Solar power purchase.
all right, so I want to move on. I'm going to go ahead and move on, even though we're about 5 minutes early. So what I wanted to do was, the beginning of actually, it wasn't even the beginning of last year. I think it was August 14th. The date's right on here. We defined our goals and objectives. And I just wanted to go through this, before handing the gavel that we don't have over to the new chair. I just wanted to go through and assess how we did against what we said that we were going to do. The first bucket of things that we had was really improving communication with other boards. I think we did that in some cases. I think in some cases I feel like we might have fallen behind a little bit. We did do quite a bit of a few outreach to personnel board. I think for some reason things didn't go quite as well this year with FinCom as it had in previous years. I would say that, for the first bullet here, which is active participation on the part of BOS liaisons to other boards and committees, I think we did pretty well about that. I'm not sure that we did super well about always reporting back what we were doing.
And it certainly wasn't equal across all our liaison responsibilities because of the huge amount of activity in a few of them.
Yes, and I think that's to be expected. We're going to get into the liaisons soon. We're not going to decide them tonight, but at least just kind of go through it quickly once Barney gets here. Some boards, they don't meet as often. We're just there. We're just there for them to know who to contact if they have an issue. Others, it's much more active involvement, and of course, some we're actually
Part of it.
Part of it. And so obviously, there's various levels of participation. So I guess I would give us maybe a B- on that one for the year would be my thought. A B. Okay, a B.
Yeah. I guess the question is, do we want to discuss how we could improve this before moving on? Or do you want to just give yourself a grade and move on?
Well, I'd like to go through how we did in the past, and then I think that part of our,
Okay.
I think, part of the next year's goals would be kind of going through that. I mean, but certainly as we're going through this, and if you want to bring up anything, I do not want to cut off the conversation.
Well, I just, I don't know how we do this any differently. First of all, we all have, there's a gazillion things. We all have 13 to 16, assignments. I'm just wondering if we shouldn't give some thought as to prioritizing. And I don't want anybody to feel that their committee isn't important, but the thing is, there's certain importance to us in terms of, our job in shepherding, the tax rate, for instance.
I mean, I think you have to leave that up to the individual liaison to make that decision, because I think any given year, those priorities will change depending on the work to be done in a particular committee that year. This year, for instance, the solar working group was a huge commitment. That's probably going to go away, which will give you time then to work on other things.
Well, okay, but I think maybe we could look forward and say, well, this year, it'll be, continue to them, or it would be the cell tower, so that, we know where we're, so we don't have surprises at the end of the day. They're suddenly, gee, they're asking for 100,000, where did that come from? And was it well considered? And, because if you have somebody there all the time, they can either vouch or say, well, whatever.
What I was going to suggest for this one for next year is, I was going to suggest that it's on our goals for next year, but I was going to suggest that we identify the liaison roles, or where we're actually actively on the committee, because these committees we put together for a reason,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so I was going to say, we identify those that we would like some more formal updates on. And it would be the liaison who would provide that update and bring people in as needed, but it would be a more formal, sometimes we leave it till the very end, the liaison roles, and the next thing you know, we're talking about FinCom, right? There are certain periods of time when it shouldn't be a liaison report, right? I mean, it should be something in there where the liaison is leading a discussion.
Right.
I agree with you, and that's where I was trying to get to with this conversation of how we're going to fix this, because we can't be everywhere at every time. There are some.
I would say this past year, there were more liaison reports than I had experienced in some previous years, which was great, because it just meant that there was, just a lot more involvement, or at least more interest in sharing what was going on. But we had a lot going on this year.
Yeah, we
I'm not
did.
trying to knock the previous Board of Selectmen.
No.
So improving the relationships between the Board of Selectmen, the Trust and the Housing Authority. I would say that we failed on that one.
I don't know that we failed.
We certainly need to improve the relationship.
Yeah, well,
That was the year before. The year before was the big failure. This year, we got along very well with our housing authority.
Better defining the role of the Personnel Board. I think we did that, but I think we need to continue. And I think this was probably not properly worded, the role of the Personnel Board. But I think that, we need to finish up that process. And you gave it to the Personnel Board. I'm assuming they haven't had a chance to meet.
They're meeting next week.
Okay. So I would say that that's something that we still want to do. I mean, I would give us a C because it's still open. But I don't know if anybody disagrees with that.
That's good, yeah.
We're just going through the goals for last year, just to kind of close it out. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen.
Sorry to be late, but we
I
had a
welcomed you
lovely
before when you
concert.
weren't here.
Oh. Okay.
That's the way he works.
Yeah, but it's welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Personnel and town halls, goals and reviews for all direct reports to the Board of Selectmen, we did not do that.
No.
It's something that we actually have to do. So I'm going to propose, when we get to it, that it's a goal for next year. Complete the town administrator's contract, we did that.
Yay, we can take it off our thing.
The police chief contract, we did that.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
The school committee teacher's contract, we did
Yes.
that. We did not ensure the establishment of reviews for all staff. Hire a new chief, we did that, and we supported in the hiring of a deputy chief, because this was for last year, so that was Bert.
Right.
That was Bert. So we hired a chief twice. We
Yeah.
should get extra credit.
And what's missing from here is we also did the police contract.
Yeah, the,
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
union contract.
Chief contract, I'm not-
Oh, and determine where succession plans should be considered. We've started. We're not.
Yeah, police union contract, we really didn't do, we talked a lot about the need to do succession planning, but we really didn't formalize that.
Yeah, we really have to focus on that. though.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say that should be on next
Yep.
year's. Policy updates. So everything was reviewed as part of putting the policies online, but I don't know that we actually did a very in-depth review. David Friedman did a review, but that doesn't change a policy. So I think we probably want to look at this again. And the financial policy, I'm pretty sure a lot of work went into that, but not by me.
Well, we've got a number of draft financial policies. Part of what Bonnie's going to be doing this year is working with this board and the finance committee to start adopting some of those policies.
Okay.
They exist, but they haven't been adopted.
Yeah, so this was the document that we had, that was drafted, it was bound, right? And it was kind of going through that and making it more formal.
That's
But,
right.
okay, so that's something I think we should complete this coming year.
Yep.
So I would say we failed on the policy updates, just to be honest with ourselves. Town finances,
I just want to say one
yeah.
thing. We were very busy putting out fires this year, but I also want to support the idea of really hitting the ground running on these policies, because I think it's going to be very important. It would, if we had some of these things done, it would have made our job easier this year, because we could have pointed the policy and say, we're doing it this way because this is the way we're going to do it,
Yeah, so the thing is, I think, this stretch now after town meeting and before September is when we really need to hammer these home, because this is when we have
Yes.
the lull.
Yeah, you feel
Yeah.
like we don't have anything to do, but we really
Yeah.
do. These are the things we have to do now, so that when it gets busy, then we have those policies in place. We're all on the same page with the FinCom and everybody else, and we can move forward, I think, a lot faster.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, town finances. It looked like we were even better this year for the audit issues, but there was still some outstanding.
Right. It was a tough year for the finance department. because,
Yeah.
You had the munis upgrade and the finance director leaving mid-year and the audit kind of getting behind schedule. But, Priscilla really held things together there for a period of a number of months.
Mhm.
But we're back, I think, more to normal now for the finance director. I think they tell you it felt like a very long year to them, but, hopefully better things ahead.
Right. The next one, I think that, I don't think we did anything on it, but I think for next year, what I would like to see is us really being very, very clear, not only with ourselves, but with Carlisle citizens, what the impact is of various spending increases.
It was done well at a global level this year, but not with individual components.
Right, and so, each $100,000 adds what? And because I think, my opinion is, this has to be our laser focus. We need to be thinking all the time as to what we're spending our money on, and ensuring that that tax increase is as small as possible. And the only way we're going to know how to do that is understanding at a fundamental level, what are the impacts of the various increases that we have? If we're saying, $100,000 for the tower, and we know that it's going to be over 10 years, we should already know what the impact is on the individual citizen for that decision. And so I think, I think it's just really, really important. And so, I'm happy to work with FinCom or finance or whoever else can. I think it's educating ourselves and educating the citizens is just going to be helpful. And I think that also goes with ensuring that as we're reporting the costs out, that it's the full costs. I mean, I think, we need to make sure that retirement and health costs are, while maybe not accounted for on an ongoing basis in each bucket,
When we're looking at the budget, we're looking at the overall budget and seeing the whole picture.
I guess I would also like to know, what did each individual, kind of a history, maybe looking 5 years back, of which the individual departments, how much did they actually spend on each actual line item? Because what I think happens is they bring back their same budget year after year after year, because that's what they've gotten. They'll give you, they'll put in a 2 or 2.5% increase for their salaries, but then they play with the money back and forth within the lines, which they, they can do, but I don't think it gives us a sense of how much do they really need and what are they using it for. So I would love to do, a zero-based exercise to find out, what did you actually spend over the last 5 years, and which buckets did you spend it out of?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I've always brought up during the budget process, because I'm trying to remember, but there's a budget for, there's a line for the next fiscal year,
Gotta eat something.
The next fiscal year guideline,
fiscal year.
and then there's the 2 previous years, but it's all what was budgeted.
It was, exactly, that's what I'm trying to say. It's always what was budgeted, not what did they spend. And I would like to get a handle on that.
But
we couldn't ask for it last
at
year
least
because
having
of all
one
the
year.
transitions of everything. Hopefully, once we're up and running this year, we'll be able to be asking for some of that background data.
So continue to educate boards on town finances was one. I think we did that. Continue to work with the finance committee. And so, this is, we did do the hard cutoff dates, but for some reason, we ended up in a worse situation this year than we were last year. And I think, we did improve the personnel request process, but we haven't resolved the personnel board quorum issues.
And we still had timing issues.
And we still, I think largely because of the quorum issues. But for some reason, at least I feel like this year was worse than last year. We got, and I don't think, it wasn't FinCom. FinCom was getting things late. We got the long-term caps very, very late. We got the facilities committee numbers which were long-term caps primarily, but we got them very, very late. We can't get something like that to Board of Selectmen meetings before because everything's already printed. And it really bound our hands into what we could adjust, because we couldn't decide, oh yes, we'll give those hours, because that was going to be an amendment on the floor of the operating budget, and we don't want to do that. And, we couldn't decide, no, we're not going to do this big project because it was already there and anybody could make the motion. So I just think we need to make sure that, we push those dates back even further. And maybe part of it was, was me that I wasn't pushing us to vote on things. But I didn't feel like we had the information to vote. It's hard to decide, do you support it or not if you don't know how much it's going to cost. But I certainly take a lot of the responsibility, but I think that we need to make sure that we work on this even more.
Yeah. I think another thing that we did this year, which I kind of liked, was, long-term caps always comes in around 300,000 to 400,000. And maybe, we look at that a little tighter, like we did this year. And we start to pull some of the things out, like actually, my kids actually said, oh yeah, they're coming in to paint the stairwells. Right, and that was one of those items that we said, well, is that really a long-term cap, or is it, so we focus even more, I guess, intently on, the long-term caps and stuff that does seem to hit us later, and just make sure that everybody knows they're not guarantees. It seems like, oh, it's long-term caps, it's in the 300,000 to 400,000 range, okay. But this year I like the way that we actually went through, and we were separate on some of the items. I think that's a good way to do it.
Well, I personally think that, like, working on policies in this lull is important and things like that. I think that we need to try to sit down with FinCom and come up with, what can we do potentially to radically try to change what our spending is, and to at least evaluate it. What happens if we don't do this? Let's just have the discussion.
Consequences.
Yeah, and so that way, committees and boards can be thinking about that and looking into it, so that when we get around to next town meeting, we can say, we looked at this, and, you know, we saved this money, but we couldn't cut here. And, you know, I think that's what we should be spending our summer with.
Yep. Well, and also some of the things, not to get a little sidetracked on this, but also some of the things that we discussed, like that 80,000 in there for the technology, right? I think this board was pretty well set, and obviously you weren't on it, so I'm not going to speak for you. But that, you know, we were going to go back to school and say, look at that 80 is not going to be a continuous thing.
Yeah.
You know, we need to figure out a better way to do this.
If it is technology, put it in the technology budget, if
Right.
that's where it belongs.
Right, and I think it's, you know, because even I had a talk with, was it Scott? Scott, at a thing at school one day, about, you know, long-term caps, and, you know, some of the things that fell in there, well, they've always been in there, but is that the right thing?
Right.
You know, I mean, now's the time to really figure that out, so.
And we need to communicate that early.
Yeah,
In
exactly.
the budget process.
Yes.
so
Right,
that
that's
they
what I'm
know
saying,
that.
this summer.
Exactly.
This summer, we just need to work
I
on it.
agree.
Yep.
Hopefully it will be a dialogue rather than.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
gonna be a
No, no,
back and
no,
forth,
we-
but that's just it, it's not.
Yeah.
It can't be, you know, in February, we're going, uh-oh, wait a second, why is this in here, wait a second, we can't. well,
We're
should we
taking
put it-
eminent domain over the school anyway. Right?
Yeah,
After
that's
this
right,
contract
that's
signed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think also, maybe we have to stop. If it's a long-term cap, we shouldn't be doing it year to year.
Right.
We should be looking at least 5 years, since these things are supposed to be lasting 5 years minimum. So, and if they're not lasting 5 years, I mean, we really have to say, if it's not a 5-year or more item, it's not in long-term caps. And we know then what, normally you should be able to inventory what your assets are and which ones are gonna last that long and be able to plan in advance and then take care of it. It's not this little ditty things that you didn't know where else to put it in your budget, so you threw it in the long-term caps.
Well, I guess maybe it's a fundamental misunderstanding on my part, but the town doesn't actually do long-term caps, right? We don't depreciate things, do we?
Right, no.
So
No, we don't.
I really think that what we need to be thinking of that long-term caps as is being projects, right? Here's a project that has to fall outside of the operating budget.
Well,
Like
actually,
a capital improvement,
the-
kind of?
Yes, it's a capital improve, that's exactly right, and that's not what it has been in the past.
No, it's kind of ongoing operating type
So this would
things.
be a topic of discussion between us and FinCom and possibly the school. In fact, definitely the school, to talk about what is long-term caps, what do we want to be doing? And then we could budget it, we could say, okay, for these sorts of things, we are always going to set aside a certain amount of money so that those projects don't go by the wayside, because they shouldn't be cut, because that's the only place we could cut, you know? That's going to be a feature of the budget.
And it realistically puts things in the regular budget, the operating budget that ought to be there, so we know what the real
That's
cost
right.
of things are.
Exactly.
Okay. Outreach.
Bill had his hand raised.
I was just going to make a comment too, is
Volunteering
that some
for
of the
the-
long-term caps things were dependent on how fast a project could get started, and you needed multi-year money instead of just single-year money.
Yes.
That has to be considered too.
Yes, and a lot of them, frankly, a lot of the items in the past couple of budgets were just, you go out and buy it. It was off the shelf, and it wasn't a project at all. It was a purchase.
Mhm. I think that was volunteering for the municipal.
Yeah, I know, you're very
Facilities Committee right
knowledgeable of
there.
this, sir.
Yeah.
Sounds like a municipal
Yeah.
facilities type.
Okay, so, I think, we can take credit for all of Dave's work on the website.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think, we really need to make sure it doesn't go stale. And I know that, Jen, you work on it, and I think we should be thinking of ways that we can use it to communicate with people.
While acknowledging a huge, it's so much better.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's incredible.
And one thing that I guess I didn't do it last year, but I did do it 2 years ago, I think, when I was chair. I think twice I wrote articles on what kind of the Board of Selectmen was working on. I particularly did one before town meeting. I think we want to consider doing that more often, whether it's a letter to the editor. I mean, Betsy just put it right in as a Board of Selectmen update thing, but just more ways for us to get information about what our priorities are, kind of this, you know.
Yeah.
Could I offer something on that too? Because it ran into something the library tried. We were trying to get communication between all the committees in town, get their agendas up in one place, put their projects up in one place, committee events, anything like that. So we hired out to another company who would do this for us. And then we had a citizen come in and object to this, saying that the town website should be doing it. And we looked back at it and said, yeah, it should, we agree. The town website should be the central location where everybody finds information about what's going on with the boards and committees and activities in town. That's gonna take an awful lot more work for somebody to input that information and outreach to the other boards and committees. The library was gonna do it because it is the center of information in town, but technically it should be on the town website. So I was just gonna.
Yeah, I think absolutely, and I think that the way, you know, the platform that the website is currently in allows for the different departments to do their own updating. I think it's just making sure that it's happening.
That's one of the things we discovered. I think we just need to make sure it happens.
Yeah. Which gets us to our next thing, which is supporting the technology group. I think that we did a terrible job of doing that this year. And the technology group is the one that would, that launched the new website. I think we need to refocus some energy on the technology committee.
So
the technology
is that a
working group.
committee
It's
or a
group.
working group?
It's a committee, it's a group that Tim put together.
Okay, well, I guess the question is, do we want to make it a committee? And maybe we need to go through our committee roster and see if some that need to fall off, and others that need to be put on. And I think a technology one would be pretty important.
Yeah.
We can find somebody in town knows about
That's another discussion.
Yeah,
for
it's
another
really
day.
hard to find people who are going to engage.
Yep.
You know, we've really struggled with this committee. Bill and I were on it. It's, you know, we've really struggled with the technology committee.
Understand. It's hard.
Supporting the facilities committee, I think we did a good job with that this year. Supporting the communications tower project. I mean, I think we don't have a liaison on that,
No.
do we?
No.
Yeah, so we might want to have a liaison to that.
We have a communications center.
Yeah, that's different.
Is that the dispatch?
Yeah, that's dispatch. So we might want to do that, or just, you know, the people on that communications center should do it.
Yeah.
Greeno barn removal, ooh. We agreed to do it this year.
So somebody actually approached you?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
They just wanted to take some things out of it.
but they want to check,
They probably want some barn timbers or
gee, I know, and I would have done that, I had my barn, but.
Yeah, okay.
But they didn't want to take the whole
The more
barn.
people take away, the less there'll be for us to
Yeah,
deal with.
Right.
yeah.
But so they weren't saying, can we have it, we will pay to remove it. They were saying, we just want to take a few parts.
Right, and I explained kind of the bigger picture to this gentleman, and he said, well, maybe as part of that, we'd be willing to sort of knock down, you know.
Yeah, I mean, even
sections
if they took sections, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no,
Leave it in the, you know.
in the end, it has to be all gone,
Oh,
because you
that's all
can't take,
gone, but-
because you wouldn't be able to board it back up again if it's like
Yeah.
one wing is gone.
No, exactly, but I mean, I guess maybe it's worth a discussion, yeah.
Do you want a barn?
Well, but if it, on the other hand, maybe we need to find out if there is somebody out there that would like to demolish it, salvage the entire thing.
So we-
Because if you let all the prime pieces go, now you're never gonna get somebody to
Right.
salvage it. And then
So
it's,
the history, the history is
Take the valuable
Tim
part,
has
leave
done
the
a
clear.
lot of outreach
okay,
and posted it, right? And,
Right.
and said, hey, this
Cherry
is,
pick it,
Yeah.
you know.
and
But they all-
nobody has come back and said, we'll take your barn. And so this goes
Okay.
back like 4 years ago. So it ended up that the Greeno Barn Committee, which was I don't even remember who all was on there, but they said we should just pay to have it taken
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
But it was going to be $50,000 or $60,000, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's that much, but I guess it depends to the level at which you do it, right? Like if we left the concrete or the floor, right? Ultimately, that would be significantly less.
How
They were
about if we
different.
store the antique fire engines? I mean, how much would it be to fix it enough to store things in it?
Well, the problem is that the barn itself isn't in terrible,
Security would be an issue.
isn't in terrible shape, and inside it's dry. There's actually really, really cool horse stalls in there. It's a really cool barn. There's plenty of room to store things. The problem is that they won't be safe because it's broken into all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to assume it would be broken into, and
Yeah.
if it was in a different location, maybe, but it's so hard to get in and around. And
Yeah, but there is access to it, actually. You can actually drive to it.
Yeah.
And, you
No,
put
yeah,
cameras
we could,
and.
yeah, we could do that. It's just
I don't,
Yeah.
it's just, again, it's one of those.
it's a good dry location where we could
Talk
store
is cheap.
And then so master
Okay.
planning project.
Yeah, well, we're supporting
And
that.
the Complete Streets project. These
Yeah.
were working groups to support.
Yep.
So those were our goals.
Well, we got a lot of them done.
I guess I would give us a C
Yep.
overall.
Well, I don't know, some things we did better than others, as you said.
Yeah, and I think there were certain things that just
Some things
sucked
you
a
didn't do at
ton
all.
of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, moving on.
Yeah, I think it's a C. Personally, I think it's a C.
Depends whether you're in high
All
school or
right.
graduate school.
Let's move on.
Flunking grade.
Yeah. You're better.
Do you want to finish up the administrator's report?
Sure. I think the next item, number 5, proposed temporary change in operating hours for the summer, which we've done the past 2 summers here. And a
What-
longer day, it's been Tuesdays, I think, the last year or 2. One long day during the week and a half a day on Friday, which is historically pretty slow in the summertime around here. And we have noticed the foot traffic has, improved somewhat on the longer days. I think the first year we did it, we didn't get very much at all because it was a new sort of concept. But people do come in and do some business on the longer day, so.
That's because they're hanging around to come to the Selectmen's meeting.
That's, well, that could be because it's on Tuesday. So you should consider that again. And police appreciate the flexibility over the summer, and as I say, Fridays are pretty slow here, especially Friday afternoon is pretty slow here.
And so these are the same hours as the previous 2 years?
This, same as last year.
Oh, that's right, we
First year was a
adjusted
little
them last year,
different.
yeah.
Mhm.
And it would go from Memorial Day through Labor Day.
Yes.
Sounds good.
I'm fine with this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whatever works.
All right, all set.
Okay.
All right, and we had a request from the Carlisle Poppy Project to display the poppies on the town common from the 19th of May through June 1st.
I thought it was beautiful last
That
year.
won't affect Memorial Day ceremonies.
It won't conflict with that, no, it'll be, out of the way.
Good point, though. I'll have to ask that. Hold on one second.
Communicate that.
The only thing we really do
definitely if it's
there
not-
is
yeah.
raise the flag on that morning. Yeah.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Selectmen authorize Carlisle Poppy Project to display poppies on the town common between May 19th and June 1st.
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
All right, and then you see the proposed meeting schedule for the summer. I know that people have vacation plans, so we don't always meet twice per month. During the summer, if you know your plans for the summer, just let us know and we can I'll try to work around that. I think historically, we've had one meeting in August rather than two the past few years, but just let us know what your plans are. And then not on the written report, I just wanted to mention that Luke and I, and actually Melinda, were part of the Complete Streets Working Group last week, and working on a recommendation for the engineering firm that will do the design of the projects that were funded with the state grant. And the group is recommending Niche Engineering to do the design work, and we don't have a contract for you. We will, by next time, I think, have a finalized agreement for you to approve, but we wanted to keep you abreast of that. And I don't know if the group want to add anything to that, but we had some good proposals, but there was a pretty good consensus that Niche is a full-service engineering firm, and they do a lot of work for the planning board.
Yeah, they still are reviewer.
They're still the peer reviewer.
Yeah.
Peer reviewer.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
They're good.
Yeah.
they're very good on the planning board.
Yeah.
So we want to execute that contract within the next few weeks and get things moving as far as that goes.
And did we need to do something about Timber Nook? That was in the packet.
Yeah. Was it in the packet?
Yeah, it wasn't in
Yep.
your thing, but it was in the packet.
No, in fact, I took it out.
Oh.
Because they came in at the last minute, and I said, well, I can't
Okay.
squeeze it in there. But since it's in there, that's a group
It's
that,
about the summer, so.
yeah,
Good to do.
yeah. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but it's an educational program for children. They're requesting use of the Conant land specifically for this educational program, which introduces children to the outdoors. And I guess they've looked at other locations, but the Conant land, although it's not conservation land, it fits their needs, so they're asking for the board's permission to use the Conant land this summer for that.
Hello.
Is it in the letter?
Yes,
Yeah, I didn't,
5 weeks of programming from 9 to 1 or 9 to 4, depending on the ages of the children. Do you want the actual dates? It's 5 weeks.
Okay.
About poison ivy?
Yep.
Minuteman Arch is a good.
Yeah.
Ooh, thank you.
Good
this is a hard one.
Yeah,
Really good.
very good.
Yeah, if we could just get more specifics about, I mean, is it every day?
Yeah, she says in here it's 9 to 1 or 9 to 4, depending on the ages of the children attending that particular one.
Yeah.
Yes,
Monday
but
to
so it is. It's literally every day that week.
I think it is.
And how do they get the kids here? Is there traffic? Is there, I mean, if we have,
Didn't ask
is there
that. We
pickup
can-
is,
yeah,
drop
we
off
can
is, you
find
know what I
out.
mean? I don't want
Yeah.
to create,
Maybe-
log jam here
maybe they
at
could come
8:30 in
and
March.
chat with
us.
Yeah, I think, I'm not saying.
Sure, I think, yeah. I
She
think we're
describes that.
Thinking of having them in.
Heather,
She
did you
does.
see that there was a description about the drop-off and pickup?
Yeah,
Okay.
there was.
All right. Yeah, I'll ask them to come in and present to the board next time. Right, I think that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so I just want to, so one of the big things here is Kim just said it, but please make sure we get back to him about which of these
Dates.
proposed dates here
Yes. Yeah.
we can attend throughout the year, in the summer.
Just a quick question here, and you may have talked about this already, but the idea of some kind of a retreat for the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, we haven't talked about that yet.
Just thinking
Yeah.
that might be something you'd want to work into the summer rather than going into the fall.
Especially if we're going to somebody's place in Rockport. How can I say, whose place in Rockport? By boat. Ooh, by boat.
Some people will do it by boat, yes.
That'd be fun.
I'm in by boat.
And if you don't have your boat of your own, we'll use somebody else's boat.
And I have dinghy for young cooperative crowd.
So do I. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Not big enough for everybody to get on it all at the same
So
time.
the next thing is, liaison reports, if anybody has anything, but I want to first there's liaison memberships here. So, Barney, these are most, if not all, of the different committees that we have.
Yeah.
Some of these, well, these are all just ones where we have a liaison, so you're not on the committee, and you don't have to go every time. Some of these, all we're doing is telling them who the person is so they know who to contact if there's a problem. Others, you're much more actively involved. Like Luke and I were pretty actively involved in the public safety because of the fire chief process and contracts. So it varies. And we're about ready to have a liaison report, so I'm going to guess there aren't a whole lot of them. So we should all just take a look through this, and it's based upon your interest, and then what we do is we just try to make sure that it's evenly distributed, that somebody doesn't have 30 and Luke once again only has 1.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's the school committee.
I think some of these we should rejigger a little because, for instance, CPA, that must be on here, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it says Luke, but he's actually on the committee, so it's not.
I'm the chair for the 9th year in a row. Yay!
And then the long-term caps, it said, had Carrie and Kate, but I was actually a member of the committee, so we didn't need Carrie on there as a liaison, because I was. So I'd like to see, I don't remember who was actually members of which committees, so that we could clean this up a little bit before we start.
Hopefully, at least if there's somebody who was a member of the committee, hopefully they were at least one of the names on the right-hand side.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Okay, yeah, so just.
So how do you proceed on this typically?
Just kind of
give it
indicate
to.
what you're interested in.
Yeah, next meeting, we'll just go through it and everybody say what they're interested in, and then they get divvied up and we duke it
Yeah,
out.
okay.
Yeah, should we get rid of the ones, though, that aren't, so like the
Yes.
dog committee isn't a committee anymore, right?
Yeah,
So
that's what I
fine.
was trying to also just clean up, doing a little housekeeping here to figure out what is really necessary in here. So if there's no more dog committee, we shouldn't have it on there.
Yeah, I think that might be the only one that's no longer here, though. I mean, CCTV, CCTV is no longer here, but
Right,
we
Housing
have.
Authority.
Yes, Housing Authority. Well, yes. Library, long-term caps, pathways. So, when you have police department, that's not a committee.
But liaison
That's a-
to the police
That's a
department.
liaison to the police, okay, so it's like, okay.
It's the same thing
And
as.
technology is not a committee, it's a working group.
Yep.
So I guess I would also like to have some indication of what is a committee, what's a working
what's a
group,
committee?
and what's a department. I think that would be helpful as well.
Yeah,
I mean, because town clerk,
right. Yeah, so CPA is an actual committee, right?
when dog committee's gone, yes.
Energy Task Force, so do we actually want somebody on that?
I think we do. I think we want somebody actually as a member, not just a liaison.
Okay.
So I think it's going to be increasingly important for us to be
I agree.
involved in these things.
Yeah, so for that, we'll have to take a look at the charge and what the makeup is.
Yeah.
So actually, 1 year, Jen, you had all the charges, you had really done a nice job with all the charges of everything. Could we get an electronic copy of that or something? It's probably on the website, but I kind of don't feel like I know where it is in one spot. I'd like to have a copy of it, and I can put it up here so that.
So long-term caps, that's another one we want somebody on, right?
I'm on it.
Right, so, but we
Yeah,
want.
I don't know, remember how long my I think I'm on it for one more year.
Yeah.
See, that's the other reason why it would be nice to have those things.
Yeah. Yeah, then the Deer Committee, right, that's another one.
Yes, and that was, yeah.
Right, well, I think the other thing that we'll be doing is the
That's all.
appointments to committees. Maybe we could at least
Yes.
just get next time what all the committees are and who's currently on them. And
Yeah.
I mean, I know you guys have that readily available as to when the expirations are and.
Yeah, apparently the website's not up to date, though.
What, since the elections, maybe?
No, it was, I think it was the municipal facility, somebody looked themselves up and they found out, it wasn't correct in there, so.
And are you saying that if a member of the Board of Selectmen is actually a member of the committee, you don't need an additional liaison from
That's
the
right,
board?
they are the
Okay.
liaison.
So
All right.
so typically,
Okay.
typically there's only, we look to only have one name on here.
Right.
But sometimes there's two names because it's a big committee, or because there were two people that felt strongly they wanted to be involved.
Got it.
Yeah. And I guess what we should also start starring are, so we've wanted somebody like that, thought, from this selectmen to be on the long-term cap. So
Yeah,
we've
well,
always had one.
Yeah, that's what I'm
So,
saying.
and which ones,
Maybe
so it would be nice
indicate
if we could also indicate those
Yeah.
on this, so we know which ones and maybe there's ones that we're not on yet that we really would like to be on, rather than just
Yeah, I think so.
liaising.
If next time we could look at this and we could look at the committees,
Yeah.
Right.
Have a-
That
committee
would-
membership now.
Yeah.
On easier.
Yeah.
So,
But we can't just, suddenly say we're going to put a board of selectmen on
No.
it. We'll have
No.
to change the membership of the committee.
We may or may not, but we'll see. We can, for instance, if nobody wanted, we can't be on the FinCom, but,
Right, but if there's 5 people on it, they all want to be on it, it'd be tough for us to say.
but let's
One
say,
has to
for
come
some
off because we
reason,
wanna be on it.
they just couldn't find anybody to be on the Agriculture Commission, and somebody here, was
Then we could
willing
put
to
somebody
become
on,
a
yes.
member, then they could be appointed as a member.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that's what happened with Municipal Facilities Committee the first time around. We couldn't get anybody, so I went on it. It also allowed me to convince Bill to get on it.
yeah.
Because I don't think we have a special spot on it. Okay,
Yeah, well, then how did I end up with it?
because you took over as the liaison, and there wasn't anybody else speaking up. You replaced Bill. You volunteered for
I
that one.
guess,
It
I
wasn't because
guess.
you were on the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah. So there are a couple other things, though, complete streets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I still have to
Yes.
draft those charters,
Yes,
or that
okay.
charter.
Right.
And then the other thing is, and Barney, you sent an email with respect to this, but the master plan, I definitely think Carrie should stay involved, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But I still think we need a BOS liaison, because unless Carrie wants to come to every meeting and report.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not only that, but it's not, I don't believe it's our appointment to that committee, is it? Isn't it the planning board that appoints that committee?
Yes, on our committee.
So we don't
Oh, it
appoint.
does?
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not our committee.
But they don't have a BOS, I thought?
We could ask for
They may have,
I think we
They
should
may have-
have one, jeez.
Yeah.
I think so too.
I believe Carrie is on the committee. And
He is.
Yeah,
He is.
right.
It
Yeah.
is our
rep.
committee too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I don't think it was by charter necessarily.
Okay.
And, so anyway, we have to talk to planning board about that.
so for next time, and, I'm not going to be the chair, but if for next time, we can have also the charters, as Kate was just asking.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm
And then,
asking for.
so I'm not sure where this really fits in, because I'm not sure that it's entirely an overlap, but lots of discussion around the transfer station. We have household recycling, but I think this is a bigger thing on the transfer
agree.
station.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we should put together a short-term committee just to evaluate what we should do there, or what? There were some direct actions that I think are easy
Yes.
for us,
Well, there's some specific
obvious
proposals.
stuff that we should do.
Yeah.
And so how would we go about doing that?
Yeah, well, and I think one thing that was clear at the last meeting is the recycling committee is doing one thing, and Gary's doing the same thing, and they're doing it in
In silos.
either parallel or diverging, but not converging tracks.
Right.
We don't want
Right,
that.
he's already talking to compost people.
Right.
And-
Right, and they
Yeah.
didn't, I don't think the household they knew that,
No, they
and
didn't
they had
realize
money
it.
that they wanted to spend.
Right.
So I think, I don't know, is that a working group? On the other hand, if it's a committee, I would also have representation from the Municipal Facilities Committee on that, because they also are evaluating the site and, for various things.
Right. Well, I get, maybe we revise the recycling, household recycling
Right.
charge.
Well, maybe it shouldn't be called that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, I mean, that's probably quite
Broaden
dated.
its
Yes.
scope and,
So we'll take a look at that
Yeah.
when we see the charge for
When we see
that.
the charts, yeah.
But I'm just going to write down transfer station so we don't forget it. All right.
And did you want to
Yeah.
put communications tower project on?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So I guess, looking at this again,
Though I think that probably should be whoever's on,
The communication
The
center
communication
kind of
center
encompasses
one.
that as well.
yeah.
Okay.
It's their infrastructure.
yeah. I guess I'd like to see this be reorganized just a little bit by, subheadings, so committees.
I can
yeah.
send it to you.
Committee.
I did this. I'll send,
Oh, so you're, it's
I'll
your
send-
fault. Okay, would you send me an
Yes,
electronic?
this is my fault.
Word? No,
yeah.
it's just that way because it's neither alphabetical, nor is it by,
You may do whatever-
like function or anything.
It's alphabetical until we add it.
Train of thought.
Didn't get to dog committee.
It's alphabetical until you get to the new ones. So I can
Okay,
send this to
that-
you.
that would be great.
And then you can do what you would like
Thank
with
you.
it. Okay. Are there any liaison? Dying to get to number 8.
I think I already gave my liaison report about the Municipal Facilities Committee. But just trying to look ahead to the next.
I'm not even going to take them out of my binder. We are not going to do minutes
Oh,
this
good,
time.
yeah. Well, I will take them out of my binder so I can take them home and read them.
Okay. Any other liaison reports?
Cranberry bog is still going on.
We had a town meeting. That's my liaison report.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
When was that?
It was forever. I think it's still going on.
It's still going on. Recused ourselves for the night.
All right. Reorganization of the board. What happened to it? Oh, it's here. Again, as I said at the beginning, this is typically done at the beginning of the meeting, but we wanted to absolutely make sure that Barney had a chance to participate in this. There is no set rule on how we do this, but I would say that kind of the past trends are that, whoever is the vice chair often becomes the chair. Whoever is the clerk often becomes the vice chair, unless there's a whole bunch of new people. And we don't normally have a new person immediately become a chair or a vice chair. There's normally at least a year before that happens.
I did.
In fact, not the first year.
Yeah, vice chair.
Oh, vice chair.
Yep.
Yeah. It's because we don't like you.
No.
And so that's the typical flow is vice chair to chair, and then chair to just a regular member.
Or emeritus.
I didn't feel that way. But that is just kind of a general rule. I mean, it's very flexible just to make sure that, people are comfortable. Like I think Kerry was very, very strong, I think, as a remote person, but there was no way he was going to be able to be the chair because then for, many months out of the year, whoever was vice chair was going to have to be the chair. And that just wouldn't work out very well.
By the way, I just haven't reread the policy handbook. We actually have a policy that chair should not, unless in extreme circumstances, that the chair should not be more than 1 year at a time. And I think we need to remind other boards and committees.
That's from the Mental Health Committee.
Actually, that's not new. And the Board of Selectmen has reminded, I think, every other year that I've been on here, that the problem is just, so I'm not aware of us, except for John Gorecki was chair 2 years in a row. But I'm not aware of other times that has
I
happened.
think Tim Hope was once, but
Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes there are circumstances where it just made sense, and we were all very appreciative that John would take it on 2 years in a row. It was his last year.
We need that other arm, still grumbling.
And
Well, I mean, then there's a CPA.
you don't distract at all.
Should just be able to ignore me, everybody else seems to. You haven't learned over the year?
Anyway, but
I
as I said, it is a
forgot about
policy.
that. Yeah, yeah. And so, but I think that there's
Just reminding
there's
us
just,
all.
yes. And we do, and we can again remind all the committees that we really want them to try to rotate it around. It's just, some committees, it's just,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, they just don't want to, they don't want to do that, like CPC.
Yeah, I tried once, Ed was chair for, I think, almost a full year. A season, it's not even a full year thing, and then he quit.
Okay.
It's my fault. Wasn't my
I
fault.
move to nominate the Honorable Catherine Reed as chair for this coming year of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
All right. Any further discussion?
I wouldn't say honorable, but okay.
I will speak to you later.
The evidence.
There we go, there we go.
And this problem that sits to my left,
Elderly?
I will be very happy to hand over to you.
Did you say elderly?
No, I didn't.
Oh, that's what I thought I heard.
I don't consider anybody younger than me as being elderly.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, aye. Okay, I promise not to fall off any ladders this summer. so
Okay,
that we can actually meet.
did everybody say aye? I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay,
Aye.
okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, where's my gavel?
Finish up
All
the
right,
committees.
so we need to nominate a vice chair.
I move to nominate Alan Lewis as vice chair of the Board of Selectmen. I'm not gonna do that. No honorable, no, nothing.
Now you can use
Yeah.
elderly appropriate.
Yeah, that's it.
second?
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Okay. 4 in favor and 1 abstention. And we have one more office to fill as clerk. Maybe we
Just
have
for
to
Barney.
call for volunteers for that one.
The clerk
What is
is,
the role of the
Yes.
clerk?
so the clerk is somebody who is able to come in, correct me if I'm wrong, come in and sign things if needed.
some notes and-
Yes, and just, I think it's primarily that. It's typically somebody who can get here pretty quickly.
Right. The ones who go.
I get it because I can walk here, okay, I got it.
But I have to,
okay.
but I do want to ask one
Yes.
question. Have you ever done anything as clerk? Have you been requested? 'Cause I was clerk, I was never asked to do anything ever.
I've signed a couple of things, yes.
You did? Oh, okay. Maybe they just didn't like
I'm not sure
you.
because I was clerk. It just
They didn't
I was
trust
the only
you.
one around.
You were the only one around, yeah, and I think the same for me. I was clerk my first year, and I don't call
Yeah, I didn't realize there were duties.
yeah. You don't have to take
Just like the title, put it on your LinkedIn
good,
page,
too.
yes.
Exactly, on a CV, yeah.
There you go. So do we
So
have a
I
nomination?
don't think it makes sense for me to be a clerk because I'm working.
I would nominate Barbara Barney Arnold as clerk.
Second?
Is there any further discussion?
Third.
You accept the nomination?
Yes, I do,
All
thank you.
those in favor?
Aye.
Great. That was unanimous. No abstentions. Well, I think we are going to skip the minutes, so that leaves only one thing left on the agenda,
we
and that's
adjourn.
adjournment.
And we're going to be out of here by 9:30.
I move that we adjourn.
I just said that.
I second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Feet.
Aye.